Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United
to
States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Very good. You're official. We'll sign these at the end. Okay, up next, Ellie Haviland. I state your name.
I, Ellie Haviland,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations. You're welcome. Up next, Ms. Schumacher. I feel like we've done this before. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Corey Schumacher,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. And one more time. Judy Hegenauer? Yeah, okay. Please raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Judy Hagenauer,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United
to
States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California.
that I take this obligation freely
That I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservations
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion.
and that I will well and faithfully
That I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
about which I am about to enter.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is we're officially called to order and the flag salute. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have public comment. We have Gretchen Newsom.
Good afternoon. Gretchen Newsom speaking on behalf of IBEW 569 and our 3,400 members. Congratulations on your first meeting. This is certainly a milestone. We look forward to working with you and collaborating with you to build a community choice energy program that delivers community benefits, including the development of local renewable resources and good middle-class union career opportunities. During the formation of this JPA, IBEW Local 569, along with our allies at the Sierra Club, identified several serious concerns in need of addressing, including the allowance of unbundled renewable energy credits, a lack of workforce standards, vague strategic plan language lacking specifics around equity, labor standards, community benefits, local projects, or public review, and the absence of a community advisory committee. Also of concern, the JPA document provides for flexibility to use revenue from the program on things that are not relevant to the CCE as long as it is a ratepayer benefit. We need to get this right, and we can get this right. So we urge you to work quickly to address these concerns and ask you to take action at your next meeting to introduce changes to the JPA document to ensure a program is on the path to deliver community benefits, 100% renewable energy, and create local clean energy careers where workers earn good middle-class wages and benefits and have a voice through collective bargaining. Thank you.
We just had one speaker. Board comments?
I'd like to take a moment to first welcome everybody to the city of Carlsbad. We're pleased to host the first meeting of the Clean Energy Alliance today, and just wanted to state how thrilled I am to be sitting here with my colleagues today in the cities of Del Mar and Solana Beach, and look forward to continuing to work toward a bright future for all of us.
I echo your comments. It's an honor to be here, and it's great to see so many people interested in this momentous day. And I look forward to getting on the path to 100% clean energy.
I echo all of those comments too, and I do hope that we will get this right, and we will get this right, and it's an exciting day. So thank you all.
So on to new business. First, congratulations on your appointment. My name is Clem Brown. I'm the Environmental Sustainability and Special Projects Manager for the City of Del Mar, and I'm thrilled to be here today, and I'll be covering items 1 through 3. So the first order of business for this new board is to elect a board chair and vice chair. The recommended action that was in your agenda packet is that the board elect a director to serve as chair and another director to serve as vice chair through fiscal year 2019-2020 pursuant to section 5.2 of the Clean Energy Alliance JPA agreement. Just a little bit of background, the term would be for the fiscal year, so it's an annual fiscal year term. There are no term limits contemplated in the JPA agreement. The chair obviously presides over the board meetings. The vice chair will serve in the absence of the chair, and any vacancies are to be filled at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the CEA from that point of that vacancy. That is a very short staff report on a very short item. So I will answer any questions you might have on that or welcome your discussion.
I'm ready to make a motion that we elect Councilmember Corey Schumacher as our chairperson.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much.
Any discussion?
Vote?
Oh, we vote.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
We need a vice chair.
We need a vice chair.
All right, ladies.
I would be honored to serve as vice chair, but I'm also happy to wait my turn, but,
I'm happy to allow you to. It doesn't
Okay.
matter to me.
okay.
So
I will
I will make
nominate
a motion,
myself.
and I would second that motion. And any discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Okay. Item number 2, appoint interim board secretary. So the recommended action is that the board appoint Sheila Cobian, the clerk services manager for the city of Carlsbad, as interim board secretary pursuant to section 5.3 of the Clean Energy Alliance JPA agreement. Background and discussion on this item is that the secretary is obviously responsible for minutes and any other official JPA document records. We recommend that Ms. Cobian fill this position until a permanent secretary is appointed, and Ms. Cobian meets all the qualifications for the position, given her position as clerk services manager for the city of Carlsbad. And Carlsbad is entitled, per the JPA agreement, to full cost recovery for providing this service to the JPA on an interim basis. That concludes the report. Happy to answer any questions. Welcome any discussion.
I'm ready to make a motion to appoint Sheila Cobian as the interim board secretary.
Second? Oh,
Any discussion? No? Let's go ahead and vote.
position?
Yes, please.
Yay.
All right, moving right along. Next is to appoint an interim board treasurer and chief financial officer. The recommended action is that the board appoint Mary Barcuti, finance director, treasurer of the city of Solana Beach, as the interim treasurer, chief financial officer, or CFO, pursuant to section 4.5 of the Clean Energy Alliance Joint Powers Agreement. Background and discussion: the treasurer, chief financial officer for the JPA is responsible for all cash management, financial transactions, audits, and JPA deposits. The full duties are outlined of the CFO are outlined in section 7 of the JPA agreement. Staff recommends that Ms. Barcuti fill the position until a permanent CFO is appointed. Ms. Barcuti meets all the qualifications for the position, given her current position at the city of Solana Beach as treasurer and director of finances. And Solana Beach, again, like Carlsbad, is entitled to full cost recovery for providing this service to the JPA on an interim basis. With that concludes the report. Looking to make a motion.
I would love to make a motion to have Marie Bercuti be our financial treasurer.
And I'll second.
Any discussion? And vote.
Oops. Oh, yeah. I thought I got to stay.
All right. Good afternoon, board. My name is Dan King. I'm the Assistant City Manager for the City of Solana Beach. And like Clem, very happy to be here this afternoon for our first meeting. I'll be presenting item number 4, which is the Chief Executive Officer request for proposals. So the recommended action is that the board authorize the development and release of a request for proposals and direct staff to return to the board at the December board meeting to select a qualified consultant to serve as the CEO for the fiscal year 2019-20, pursuant to section 5.5 of the Clean Energy Alliance JPA. For background and discussion, the CEO is responsible for the day-to-day operation and management of the JPA of the CCA program. These duties include developing, planning, and implementing the work plan necessary to achieve the 2021 launch, developing and implementing the Clean Energy Alliance budget, developing the board agendas, writing staff reports, and making presentations to the CEA board, and other duties as assigned by the CEA board of directors. So at this time, staff is recommending that the board consider contracting with a qualified consultant to fill the CEO role in the interim basis. Staff does not believe the hiring of a full-time permanent employee at this stage of development of the JPA would be financially prudent or operationally necessary. And CEA will, if approved, CEA will operate in a lean, fiscally prudent manner to ensure operational efficiency and effectiveness to the benefit of all of our customers. The board may, at any time in the future, decide that hiring of a permanent staff member is necessary for the ongoing administration of the CEA. And should the board engage a consultant to serve as CEO, staff recommends the board retain its ability to hire a permanent staff member at any time it deems necessary, and that'd be to include a immediate termination clause in the agreement, much like our general counsel and special counsel agreements. However, staff does recommend that the board retain the ability to extend those services past June 30, 2020, should the board determine it's in the best interest, both financially and operationally, of the JPA. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Question?
One question, this is just for clarification. So this refers to the chief executive officer, and there's some documentation later in the packet that talks about the executive director, and is that the same role?
It's the same role.
Okay,
Correct.
thanks.
Councilmember Becker, did you have a question? Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. I have one question. Will staff be bringing back a variety of choices back to the board, or a single recommendation?
So I believe the plan is to, if authorized, release the request for proposals, hopefully by the end of next week, have it open for about 3 weeks, and then, if necessary, conduct interviews. And at that time, bring the board in if necessary, and then bring back to the December meeting.
Yeah, I would just add, whatever responses we get in response to the RFP would be presented to the board ultimately. So if we get one response to the RFP, we'll bring you one option. If we get several, we'll bring those forward for board consideration.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any additional questions?
I'd make a motion to approve staff recommendation that we request for a proposal for Chief Executive Officer.
1 second. Any discussion? And vote as soon as it starts blinking.
Gotcha. See, you needed that lesson.
Okay, good afternoon again. I'm Jason Haber. I'm the assistant to the city manager here for the city of Carlsbad, and congratulations again to all of you on your appointments. This item is to appoint general counsel for the JPA, and we have a recommended action that the board appoint Richards, Watson, and Gershon as general counsel and authorize the board chair to execute a legal services agreement in an amount not to exceed $80,000 for the current fiscal year, 1920. Section 5.6 of the Joint Powers Agreement for Clean Energy Alliance requires that the board appoint a general counsel. That position is responsible for the legal aspects of the day-to-day operation of the JPA, and RWG meets all of the qualifications necessary to fill that role. And Greg Stepanisic, in particular, has been working with all 3 of the cities, but under contract to the cities of Del Mar and Carlsbad since April of this year, helping us throughout the process of JPA formation and all the negotiations that went into the creation of the Clean Energy Alliance. And with that, Greg Stepanisic is available on the phone here today, and so I wanted to invite him for a moment to talk a little bit about background and experience of their firm and the scope of services that he will be providing as general counsel. Greg?
Thank you, Jason. And first of all, congratulations to the board on this really big event today and having your first meeting. It's a pleasure to be talking to you by phone today. And my background has been for over 40 years now, representing local public agencies and primarily cities. As city attorney for over that time for 6 cities. And it was in 2008 that I first became involved with CCAs and was asked to assist in the formation of the first CCA in California, which was Marine Clean Energy, and was their first general counsel before they then ultimately hired in-house counsel. And then went on in 2016 to help in the formation of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And I, at this time, I continue to be general counsel for SVCE. Also provided assistance to East Bay Community Energy, and one of my partners is currently the general counsel of EBCE. Helped out Central Coast cities, and they ultimately joined Monterey in their efforts to form a CCA, and then had the pleasure of being asked to work with all of you to form CEA. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about in my experience in this area. And just briefly, in terms of the duties of general counsel, it really is to make sure that all the issues that may come up with any governmental agency, Brown Act issues, conflict of interest issues, are addressed. We oversee and review the contracting of the alliance. And one thing we don't do is we're not energy lawyers, so if we don't do any work on the PPAs, and likewise, and you have another item on the agenda for the regulatory work before the CPUC, that also does require specialized legal services.
One question. Any questions?
Hello, Greg. Stepanasic, is that how you say it? Sorry about that. Are you going to be attending our meetings, each of them by phone or in person?
Well, so I have a conflict on Tuesdays because I need to be in the city of Fairfield where I'm city attorney. But on the Thursday dates, I can be in person. So so that is was an open date for me, which is as being proposed on the agenda later today.
Well, could we talk about that, whether he needs to be here in person or by telephone? I mean,
And again, I definitely can do it either way. It's really your decision as to what you think would be best.
Yeah, I think, Ms. Haviland?
Well, I was going to suggest initially that we have them here in person because there's so much decisions to be made and legal counsel would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mr. Stefanovic, this is Corey Schumacher. First, I want to thank you for all of your help with the JPA agreement that we were going through, the negotiations. And then second, we are going to be discussing a little later the agenda item specific to the set times and dates. Is there a little flexibility on Thursdays just in case the time that has been proposed doesn't work?
Yes, any time on Thursdays would be fine. No matter whatever time works for the board would be fine for me. And there's other days also that I would be available. If it turned out a Thursday was problematic, it was just that my conflict would be on Tuesdays or on the second Wednesday of each month because I have the SBCE meeting on the second Wednesday of the month.
Okay, and would you be able to be present as we go through this initially?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
Would you be able to be present in person for the foreseeable future?
Yes, I would be able to be present in person for the meetings.
Okay.
I would just add one caveat on your behalf. I believe, Greg, the first meeting that's proposed, the second meeting in November is proposed for a Tuesday, which I believe you would have a conflict for, but either you or an associate attend by phone was the plan, I believe?
Yes, so for the next Tuesday meeting, I would be available by phone.
Okay, so that does actually bring up a question. If Mr. Stepanasic is not able to attend in person, would an associate be able to attend in his stead moving forward?
The plan would be to have an associate call in. Are you asking if they could attend in person instead?
Either way, yeah.
Well, for the next meeting is on the 19th, and it would be possible, if again, based on the agenda, that the board would prefer for me to be there on the 19th. For that day, I probably could make arrangements to have my meeting in Fairfield covered by my assistant here. So that'd be, again, if that was something that the board felt was important for me to be personally in attendance for that meeting, I could make those arrangements.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions?
Nope.
No. I'd entertain a motion.
I will move approval of the appointment of the law firm of Richards, Watson, and Gershon as general counsel.
Second?
Okay. Any discussion? Good? Okay. Vote.
The record will reflect that the motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg.
Good afternoon, board. Again, Dan King. I'll be presenting item 6, the consideration of appointment of a special regulatory counsel. So the recommended action is that the board appoint Tosdell APC as special regulatory counsel and authorize the board chair to execute a legal services agreement in an amount not to exceed $50,000 for fiscal year 2019-20. For the background discussion, the implementation and operations of community choice aggregation program requires the services of a special regulatory counsel. Some of those duties are to ensure that the CCA is compliant with all regulatory filings, and also to monitor and participate in energy-related matters before the CPUC, the California Energy Commission, and California Independent System Operator, or CAISO, as well as related issues facing community choice aggregators. We believe that it's important to get this special regulatory counsel on board as soon as possible. There's a lot of proceedings going on before the PUC and CAISO that could have potential impacts on this JPA when it's launched in 2021. So getting a special legal counsel on board to look at to monitor and participate in those proceedings, we think is of utmost importance. With that being said, the recommendations for Tazel APC, they meet the qualifications required and has been providing special regulatory counsel services for the Solana Energy Alliance since 2017. Mr. Ty Tazel is here in the audience. If he would like to come up and introduce himself and say a few words, that'd be great.
Thank you, Dan. Wanted to congratulate all of you on your first board meeting. And it's quite exciting for me to see, having been involved with CCA programs since 2013. And wanted to just briefly describe some of the work that we've done for various CCA programs throughout the state. Worked with Marin Clean Energy, Sonoma Clean Power, Lancaster Choice Energy, and Solana Energy Alliance, as Dan mentioned, to provide advice on the various regulations that come forward, primarily from the Public Utilities Commission, but also from the California Energy Commission, and related steps taken by the California Independent System Operator. So as you know, the legislature has broad oversight and authority over the energy sector, but the legislature turns to the Public Utilities Commission primarily to implement those regulations. And those regulations can have a serious impact on community choice programs. They have in the past, and we anticipate that they will in the future. Unless there are any questions, I just wanted to briefly introduce myself, congratulate all of you today. I'll be available in the audience after the meeting as well for any of you that want to talk about any specific issues that you have in mind. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Tazo? No? I had one quick question, actually. When it comes to the type of reporting that we're looking at here, how would that look for the board members as far as hearing back from your work?
Sure. Let me just describe, kind of broadly speaking, the different areas that we operate in may be helpful. We do a lot of monitoring of the Public Utilities Commission, again, primarily, and the different regulations that are in the development process. We also do sort of active engagement in those proceedings to advance the interests of the programs, and then we also work on compliance issues. So in terms of the reporting, we report on regularly on all three types of activities as they're ongoing, and typically that takes the form of a regulatory report that we submit typically on a monthly basis. But we can do so more frequently if needed. And it may be a good idea to set up a regulatory meeting with a little bit more frequency for a little while as the program gets rolling. So we also report back, as things are developing, we also report back on those individual items through email and phone calls and that sort of thing. So part of our role is to stay abreast of what's happening at the commission and report back to you all.
And then, thank you very much for that. Would you also make recommendations to the board for us to submit opinions on certain proceedings?
Absolutely.
Legislation?
Yeah, that is part of our regular duties. Involve making recommendations on which proceedings to get engaged in, to become parties in, and to press for certain results in terms of the development of regulations. And we make regular recommendations about how to go about that and do so effectively and efficiently.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ty, so much. Sure. I was just thinking about this, if you're working with the city of San Diego and their newly formed JPA. Are you also the attorney for them?
They have not put out an RFP or hired a regulatory attorney. It's certainly something that we would consider, and it's certainly something I would bring to your attention if that were to occur. I will point out that there is a substantial amount of overlap in terms of the types of activities that we do, monitoring various regulations that affect any programs in San Diego Gas and Electric Service Territory equally.
That's what I was thinking, that if we work jointly together, sharing costs and things like that, because we're both going to be wanting the same result up in Sacramento, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, and I've done this in the past, work with various programs on the same proceeding to advance joint interests, and those are worked out in advance between the parties through discussions and meetings. But I certainly have seen a lot of cost savings come about through that type of arrangement. It's certainly something we'd be open to discussing.
And of course, the larger JPA would pay more.
Presumably.
We'll talk about that later, though.
Any other questions from anybody?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Did we get a motion on that already?
Is that the end of the staff presentation?
That is the end of the staff presentation.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I would like to move approval, the board appoint the law firm of Tosdale APC as special regulatory counsel.
In a second.
Vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item number 7 is to adopt resolution number 19-001, which is to adopt a conflict of interest code. And given your action under item number 5, I'm going to put Mr. Stepanisic to work and have him provide you with an overview of this item.
Thank you, Jason. State law requires CE to adopt a conflict of interest code, and it's best to do that here at your first meeting. As there is a little process that needs to take place if you approve the conflict code today as presented to you, then it gets submitted to the County Board of Supervisors. They are considered to be the code reviewing body for their final approval. And once they adopt it, then your code has become effective, and that will trigger then the filing requirements for filing a statement of economic interest. The code here right now is pretty straightforward since we don't currently have any employees, and so the code will apply to the board of directors and all alternates on the board. It will apply to an executive director when the director is hired, applies to the treasurer and chief financial officer, general counsel, and any consultants that are hired to actually engage and advise on decision-making by the board. The disclosure categories here are going to be a little different than the disclosures you make as part of your roles with your cities as council members, because in this case, first of all, it does cover economic interest in the entire jurisdiction of the CEA rather than just simply your individual city. But on the other hand, the disclosure categories are narrower, so you would have to disclose interest in real property in the jurisdiction, but with respect to income received or business relationships, it's only going to be those that are involved in doing business with the CEA. And with this code, as employees may be hired in the future, then we would be expanding the list of designated positions by amendments, and then every 2 years, this needs to be reviewed to determine what even other changes or updating needs to be done. So happy to answer any questions, and this all seems to be in order. The motion would be to adopt resolution number 19-001.
Any question from the board? No. Entertain a motion to adopt the resolution?
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 19-001.
I'll second.
And vote. Motion passes unanimously.
It's a tough crowd.
Thanks, Greg. Okay, item number 8 is to adopt resolution number 19-002, which sets the time and place for CEA board meetings going forward. The recommended action is that the board adopt resolution number 19-002, setting the time and place for Clean Energy Alliance board meetings. Doing so is provided for in section 4.8 of the CEA Joint Powers Agreement, which requires that the board hold at least 4 regular meetings per year, but provides that you can hold more if you desire. It requires that the date, hour, and place of those meetings be fixed annually by resolution of the board. That section provides that the location of the board meetings may rotate, but in the case today, we've proposed that the location remain fixed here at Carlsbad City Hall for the remainder of the fiscal year. That certainly would be an option of the board if you wish to rotate the location or provide some alternate proposal. We'd certainly be open to that as well. We are proposing 1 regular meeting per month for the remainder of the fiscal year, beginning on Tuesday, November 19th, holding a meeting here at 10 a.m., and then from there forward each month on the 3rd Thursday of the month, beginning at 12 p.m. So with that, we would be open to board discussion and any questions.
Any discussion?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm supportive of the staff recommendation. I think it's easier for the public to have one location, and it's appropriate to have that in Carlsbad to get started, and the schedule looked fine to me as well.
I feel a little bit stronger that we would like a rotation. When we set up our original CCA, we were there saying to our residents that you can come right down to City Hall and talk to us when you need to about rate paying, and as opposed to going up to Sacramento. And I feel that I think that we're all pretty close in location, that if it's not too much trouble, I would like to have some meetings in Solana Beach. I don't know how we can work that out. I wouldn't be opposed to, for sure, till the end of the year, having them in Carlsbad. But then thereafter, I would like to have some of them, especially when we're talking about rates and different things like that, to be in Solana Beach. And I don't know how you feel about Del Mar, but I would like to have some at our City Hall.
So I'm open to a rotation. I just want to be sensitive to the fact that right now a lot of the staff is here in Carlsbad. So if we could hold it here for a period of time to just get through our initial setup.
I think we're evenly split on the staff, aren't we, or are we not?
As far as the interim staff?
Yeah.
Yes, we have Sheila,
Okay.
and then we have Marie. Yeah, are the 2.
Okay. I'm fine either way. If we do rotate, we should rotate amongst all 3 cities
Okay.
so that we're not leaving anyone out. And we have to be very clear if we're going to be rotating the meetings to the public, and
Right.
we don't have a website up and running in a central location for this, so we'll just all have to be cognizant of making sure that on our individual city websites, it's very clear where the meetings are.
Do we feel that the first maybe 6 months should be here, or the first 3 months, or something like that, or would that be more confusing?
I don't know that it would necessarily be more or less confusing. I would propose, so we've proposed it through the fiscal year, so that would take us through June. At this point, we have 2 more meetings scheduled through the end of this calendar year. We could propose to hold those 2 meetings here in Carlsbad, and then we'd have 6 more meetings through the end of the fiscal year. We could split those evenly between Del Mar and Solana Beach, maybe in 3 meeting segments. And I think we would just want time to confirm that we have room availability and make that work for each of the cities. But
Is that something that could be possible? Are you open to that, Dan? And
Yes, I think that's
in
definitely
our
possible.
City Hall, or is
Yeah,
it just a lot harder to do it that way?
Yeah, I mean, there are some logistical challenges, basically with our interim clerk and secretary being familiar with the chambers here and the setup. You just have to get used to the other cities' setup, which I think can be done. It's just some logistical challenges, but I think it's definitely doable.
And I want to echo from Del Mar. I agree with Dan. I think it's doable. We can look into room availability in Del Mar and have Ms. Cobian come down and get her trained on our AV. We're a lean enough organization. I think we can do that.
Yeah, I do like this idea of finishing up the year in a stable place that's just 2 meetings more, and then having that availability to the public in each one of our cities. I do like that idea.
Okay, that would be great.
So that's one item for discussion. And then, do we have any feelings about the date and time? I'm having a little bit, the Sandag Energy Working Group meets every 3rd Thursday at 11. So that's one of the working groups that we should actually have a pretty solid presence at.
Okay.
And I do serve as the chair on the Energy Working Group. So I was considering possibly moving, if we want to keep the 3rd Thursdays, possibly moving it to 2, potentially. But I have a conflict for that.
I'm fine with 2. Is that?
I think that would be fine. I'm trying to think of traffic now. I don't want to put you guys in a bunch of traffic, but I think that's good. And I guess we should ask Mr. Stepanasic. 2 o'clock on Thursdays work for him?
2 o'clock on Thursday is fine, yeah, that'd be great.
Does that work for staff?
So you're talking about moving all of them, not just that one?
Correct. Yeah, any 3rd Thursday would be the 2 p.m. rather than the 12 p.m. start. Unless it functions better on a different day, but just for ease.
I think Thursdays are one opportunity, given council schedules and Sandag on Fridays.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Are
so,
we ready for a resolution or a motion?
yep, I think we're
Okay.
ready for our motion.
So,
I just have one question, just in
Yeah.
terms of, right now, the way the resolution is set up is that it provides that all the meetings will be in Carlsbad for the rest of the fiscal year. At this point, do you want to allocate out the meetings as was discussed at the first part of 2020? Or would you like to just maybe amend the resolution once everyone figures out the logistics for this at our next meeting?
What would be easiest for staff? I think we're pretty clear on the direction, I believe.
Yes, I think we can amend the resolution according to the board direction here, which, as I understand it, is to hold meetings in Carlsbad through the end of the calendar year, and then for the remaining meetings through the fiscal year, to divide those between Del Mar and Solana Beach. And we'll come up with a schedule specifically that accomplishes that.
Correct.
it would be good if we could rotate it the same way each time. You know, if you're going to go Carlsbad, Solana Beach, Del Mar, do it the same way every time instead of mixing it all up. Like, oh, do you know what I mean? Would that be possible?
Why don't we bring the resolution back to you then at your next meeting with a specific rotation that we work out. For now, we'll plan on still hosting our next meeting November 19th here in Carlsbad, as indicated in the resolution, but we'll bring back this item to the board at our next meeting for adoption once we work out the schedule through the rest of the fiscal year.
Okay, so we have 2 motions that we'll be making to amend this item. The first is that the meetings would remain in Carlsbad for the remainder of the calendar year, and the staff would be coming back to us with the rotation for the remainder of the fiscal year. So that would be the first, I guess that's 2 motions. And then the third being that the set meetings would be the 3rd Thursday of each month at 2 p.m.
Yes, and we'll return with the resolution for you to consider and adopt at your next meeting. So you don't need to adopt the resolution at this meeting. We'll bring that back at your next meeting.
And just a point of clarification, it's 10 a.m. for the next meeting, December 9th?
That is correct.
November 19th at 10. The agenda does say noon, so I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and make that motion and vote on it.
Oh, I
So
think we're
those
going to do it
are-
next time.
I think we've got clear direction from
Yours-
the board
you
at
have
this
clear
point. I don't think we need a motion.
Okay.
We have direction. We'll bring that item back to you at your next meeting.
I love motions, though. I love
And then we
motions
can
and
do
votes.
is at the end of this meeting, we'll just adjourn to November 19 at 10 a.m. in Carlsbad.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go on to the next item.
Good afternoon again, Board. I'll be presenting item number 9, which is a review of the proposed implementation timeline, a general overview of the implementation plan and statement of intent, and to confirm the implementation plan assumptions so that we can bring back a draft implementation plan for you at the November 19th meeting. So the recommended action is that the board review the proposed Clean Energy Alliance implementation timeline of action items for the first 6 months, do a general overview of the CEA implementation plan and statement of intent, and confirm the plan's underlying assumptions are consistent with those identified in the CEA Joint Powers Agreement. So the implementation plan purpose, just want to state that it's really a formality at the CPUC. As of now, it's generally a template that just needs kind of specific components of it. Those are identified in the Public Utilities Code, Section 366.2C3, and is also required that the implementation plan is approved at a public hearing. The draft implementation plan that we'll bring back to you the next meeting will be modeled on successfully certified implementation plans and is intentionally flexible to provide the board the greatest discretion to develop the program over the next 18 months. So the required content for the implementation plan, that's the organizational structure, the operations and funding, the process for the rate setting, the methods for entering and terminating agreements with other entities, the rights and responsibilities of the program participants, and description of the energy suppliers. For the statement of intent, is required by the Public Utilities Code, same section 366.2, and this addresses the commitment to universal access, reliability, equitable treatment of customer classes, and compliance with requirements of state law or CPUC concerning greenhouse gas emission performance standards. So the priorities and goals of the Clean Energy Alliance that were included in the JPA was that the default energy product would be from a minimum 50% renewable energy sources, voluntary 100% renewable energy product at a premium above the default rate, and that default rates are set to provide a minimum target of 2% discount below San Diego Gas and Electric comparable service offering. For the schedule, the implementation plan and statement of intent must be filed by January 1st, 2020 to serve customers in 2021. The PUC has 90 days to certify the implementation plan meets the requirements of the Public Utilities Code or responds questions. Within the same 90 days, Clean Energy Alliance is required to submit a draft customer notice, to submit the CCA bond and SDG&E service agreement, and prepare and file the initial renewable portfolio standards procurement plan, and then that the CEA is registered as a CCA. So the next steps would be to have the draft implementation plan and statement of intent presented to the board at the November 19th board meeting to get direction and feedback from the board. And then the intent would be to bring the final implementation plan and statement of intent to the board at December 19th for approval, and then just to submit to the PUC by December 31st, 2019. So included in the agenda packet for the staff report was this timeline of action items for the first 6 months, and they're broken down by administrative tasks, implementation plan related tasks, and regulatory compliance. So this would be the schedule that staff and the interim CEO or executive director would be working off on a high level to make sure these steps are taken care of, to make sure that we are in compliance and on track for a 2021 launch. So I believe that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from the board?
I do have one question, Dan. Do we need to set the rate right now for the default rate of the 100% renewable content?
So we need to set the level. So for the default product, if you want it to be 50% or something higher that we include in the implementation plan, and then if you want to offer a voluntary opt-up at 100%, and then you can set a target rate for what that rate reduction would be. So these are just the general assumptions that are going into the implementation plan.
Okay.
I have one question on an item in the implementation timeline. The CCA bond with the CPUC. I understand, well, Solana Beach already has a bond with the CPUC for Solana Clean Energy, correct? And I thought during our discussion moving up to creating this JPA that if Solana Beach was part of our JPA, that bond would be able to use by this JPA. Am I incorrect?
Yeah, so the way we established this JPA was that it would be separate and kind of doing its own formation. Salon Energy Alliance would continue to operate independently, and so all the required steps for compliance remain for the Clean Energy Alliance, and so they would be required. The CEA would be required to submit that bond. Not to jump ahead to the next item when we talk about budget, but there are, depending on board direction, different opportunities on how to submit that or to fund that.
Okay, thank you.
I do need to push the microphone. I do have a speaker on this item.
Gretchen Newsom.
Thank you. Gretchen Newsom again on behalf of IBW 569. Just want to share some remarks that procurement decisions are critical to job creation and ensuring customers are receiving energy that is truly clean and renewable. To this end, we suggest the board adopt a requirement that Bucket 1, renewable energy, as defined under the Renewable Portfolio Standard, be the only type of renewable energy to be used in the agency's 100% renewable opt-up product. Buckets 2 and 3, as defined, are not 100% renewable nor carbon-free, and using them as a product that is being pitched to customers as 100% renewable would be false marketing and disingenuous. Thank you.
So, quick question. I've got a couple of questions after the speaker's comments. The first actually has to do with, I was hoping we could kind of zip over to a portion of the JPA agreement, and I'm hoping staff can help with section 5.9. There's two parts to my question. The first is related to a community advisory committee, and I'm hoping you can help to remind us of the language that gives us the authority moving forward to create certain advisory committees.
Thank you, Board Member Schumacher. So Section 5.9 of the Joint Powers Agreement provides that the board may establish any commissions, boards, and committees as the board deems appropriate to assist the board in carrying out its functions and implementing the CCA program related to energy programs and the provisions of this agreement. It goes on, but suffice it to say that allows the board to really the freedom to form any advisory boards or commissions that you think would be in the benefit of the JPA. That certainly contemplates and provides for the possibility of a community advisory committee.
Thank you. And noting that we are on a very restrictive timeline, when would staff contemplating us keeping this in the purview of as I've heard my colleagues at various other council meetings, their own council meetings, discuss advisory boards. I know that Solana Beach has a very specific board related to risk. And so when would be a good time for us moving forward within this timeline to contemplate advisory boards, not get in the way of any implementing timelines?
Sure. Just given the number of tasks that need to be accomplished and the criticality of the tasks that need to be accomplished through the end of this calendar year, we would suggest possibly bringing back an item after the first of the calendar year or early in the next year to have a discussion about board and commission formation, if that was acceptable to the board.
Is that something that my colleagues would be interested in?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So we'll keep that in mind moving forward. And then the second question I had was related to this idea of the 100% renewable and some of the offerings that we've contemplated. If you could respond to the speaker's comments.
Sure. So the intent of the way the JPA document was formed was really to give the board kind of ultimate flexibility in this, and being a new CCA, the generally kind of accepted practice is to really give the board complete flexibility on how they're going to meet their targets, at least initially. We don't want to handcuff the board on any of those decisions. We can definitely make it a priority that we do bucket 1, but we would really not like to limit you if there's, for whatever reason, an absolute need at the end of procurement to do a bucket 2 per se. With Solana Energy Alliance, we don't do any bucket 3s, primarily bucket 1s and bucket 2s. So it's really to give the utmost flexibility for the board in, at least in the early stages of the development and launch of the CCA.
And those decisions around that will come back to us?
Correct, yes.
And where in the process would those decisions come back to us?
Those would be, I would assume later on in the energy procurement discussions that would be happening later next year.
Okay. Thank you. And just turning to my colleagues, I think there's, I'm not sure where Del Mar is at, but I know that at least both Carlsbad and Solana Beach have made some very strong statements and resolutions around nuclear, specifically in relationship to some of the San Onofre issues. So I would imagine that that might be important for us to revisit at the appropriate time.
We haven't discussed that at council, but I could certainly put it on the agenda to make sure they're also supportive of that.
Okay. So it sounds like right now may not be the right time to have these conversations, but with regard to sort of the category 1, 2, and 3 types of energy, we can keep that in mind in what we'd like to do with the different offerings. Does that sound?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I think we need to keep it open, at least for bucket 2 at this point, and then, back in, I guess, once we get closer to that, we can talk more about it, but.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions, discussion?
Not on this item, no.
Are we comfortable with the motion to approve this timeline?
Yes, I'll move approval of the timeline in the staff report.
I'll second.
Motion carries unanimously.
Moving right along to item 10, a discussion on the draft fiscal year 2019-20 initial budget and to consider member agency advances for startup costs. So the recommended action is that the board review the draft fiscal year 2019-20 Clean Energy Alliance initial budget pursuant to section 7.31 of the CEA Joint Powers Agreement and consider requesting advances in the amount of $150,000 from each city or member agency to fund initial cost in the amount of a total of $450,000 for fiscal year 19-20 to be repaid from future CEA program revenues pursuant to section 7.3.2 of the CEA JPA. So for the background and discussion, the initial activities focused on completing and certifying the implementation plan and completion of the CCA registration process. And those include the development and submission of a draft customer notice, the payment of the CCA financial securities requirement or the bond, the filing of an initial renewable portfolio standards procurement, and participation in an initial year-ahead resource advocacy process. And again, those total costs are estimated at $450,000 to be shared equally among the member agencies. So the initial budget addresses the need for consultant services to perform the necessary duties for a 2021 launch. And those include the technical consultants for regulatory compliance activities, legal services for both general counsel and special regulatory counsel, professional services for tasks such as graphic design services and website development, membership in the California Community Choice Association as an affiliate member, and payment of the CPUC CCA bond. So if approved by the board, staff will prepare a cost reimbursement for member agency support agreement for consideration at the next board meeting. And following funding approvals by member agency city councils, staff will present a resolution for final board approval of the 2019-2020 CEA budget. So the preliminary estimate for fiscal year 2020-2021 budget we included as just a preliminary estimate, so you'll be aware of things that we'll have to look forward to when the next budget comes around. The preliminary estimate for non-power costs is about $1,459,500, and staff will return to the board prior to the fiscal year 2021 to secure the necessary budget approvals and with the discussion of potential funding strategies, which may include the use of traditional bank financing, deferred fees, and/or partner support. So here's a quick breakdown of the initial fiscal 19-20 budget. Those line items highlighted in blue are dependent on board direction, costs that could be funded through traditional bank financing and/or deferred fees or partner support until the CCA starts receiving revenues. And then fiscal 20-2021 is the preliminary estimated budget for the next full year of operation. So I'm available for any questions on any of those line items, if there are any, or any other questions about the presentation.
Any questions?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I do have a question about the membership and dues. I don't recall that with Solana Beach, and so could you go through that?
Yes. So with Cal CCA, you see in the first year the $1,500 for affiliate membership. Since we're not an operating CCA, we could still apply for the affiliate membership and still participate in everything that they're doing and receive all their updates and regulatory discussions, legal discussions, but we won't have a vote on the board. And so in order to have a vote on the Cal CCA board, that's when you become operational, when the amount really jumps up. And that membership amount is split up into kind of two formulas: a base formula, which is based on projected revenue of the JPA or CCA, and then there's a legal fund component of it, which is kind of a formula group. So that's our estimate of what that would cost if the board chooses to become a full operational member in a vote. With the Solana Energy Alliance,
That's a yearly fee?
It's a yearly fee.
$130,000?
Yeah. With the Solana Energy Alliance, we were able to negotiate a slight, kind of a greatly reduced cost for operational membership, but we forego our ability to vote on things. And so there is room, I believe, to negotiate. Beth Vaughn from Cal CCA is scheduled to be on the agenda at our November 19th meeting, so she can come and talk more about Cal CCA as a whole, and then kind of discuss these type of, the fees and what that goes into.
So to that end, then, would one of our members then become a voting member of Cal CCA, or how does that work?
I believe it's executive directors that are the voting member.
It'd be interesting.
That's correct.
Okay.
I was hoping you could clarify for me the line item for fiscal year 1920 for professional services, 115,000. Could you just give a little bit more detail as to what those services include?
Sure. If I can go back to the implementation timeline. Sorry, it's on the last item. But when you get down into the beginning of next year, the select technical consultant to assist with regulatory filings, to develop the RPS procurement plan, to execute the agreement with SEG&E, the resource adequacy filings, like those type of technical services. And again, that's at the direction of the board. We could go out to an RFP and request if there's any consultants or other partners out there that would be willing to do those things on a deferred payment schedule. But for the purposes of this budget, we wanted to include everything to provide the greatest flexibility for the board in making that decision.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions? Okay. Entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval of the budget presented in the staff report.
A second?
And vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And Chair Schumacher, if I might, one of the elements of this item is to authorize a request from the member agencies to provide the advances of $150,000 each to fund these initial costs. So we'd request a motion from the board to direct staff and authorize the requests of the member agencies to fund that $150,000, if you would.
Okay.
I'll move that we request that authorization by staff to move that forward.
Second. Motion passes unanimously. That is the end of the staff presentations. So I'll head over to closing comments if there are any from my colleagues.
I have some logistical questions, and I'm not sure where that would have fallen on the agenda, but I thought in closing comments we could talk about having a mechanism on future agendas for us as a board, because it's the only time we can talk with each other, as maybe a standing agenda item where we discuss what's coming up at the next meeting and discuss any future agenda items that we want staff support to help preparing. So for example, your item on committees, it wasn't on this agenda and you requested it for a future. There's probably a lot of logistical things like that as we go through the setup of this JPA that we're going to think of and want to be able to address, but we don't have a way to get that on the agenda without having a time to talk about it here.
Would you prefer that time to be at the beginning or the end of meetings?
I think the end of the meeting is fine.
Okay. Would the closing comments or board, I think we have board comments and announcements at the beginning of the meeting. Would that be an appropriate time to put it at the, instead of calling it closing comments, that we would put board comments and announcements?
Yeah, we could move it to the end if you'd like.
Okay. And then without getting too deep into any Brown Act issues, but
Right.
that would be when it would be appropriate to present possible agenda items. Does that feel
Yes.
all right? Okay.
Yeah. And then I just have a lot of questions on logistics of how this is going to work. How can the public submit public written feedback to the board? How does the board get that written feedback? Just the day-to-day logistics that we are all used to with council meetings and other boards that we're on, that I know was not something we could do for this first meeting, but I think particularly when it pertains to public participation in this process, that we nail down those procedures and talk about how that's going to work at our next meeting so that we're clear with the public on how they can get information on what we're doing and how they can submit their comments.
I was assuming that the website would cover that type of stuff. And do we know how soon the website can be up and running?
I don't think we have an estimate on that yet, but we can bring an update for you at your next board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I think something along the lines of a dedicated website, dedicated email addresses for the board members. We'll work with the board secretary and develop an item for you to consider at your next meeting.
Okay.
And then to that end, I think in support of the questions, Ms. Cobian, would you be open to receiving questions from the board and how the public can interact?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then what would be the best contact? Is it just Sheila.Cobian at?
Easiest would be clerk@carlsbadca.gov.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board?
Just one last logistical question. For board members who have questions on agenda items, are there specific staff people that work on those agenda items that could be identified for follow-up questions? Or did you envision us each working through our city staff member to get those answered? Would just like your feedback on how you'd like that to work.
Yeah, I think that would be best. Just go through your individual staff members, at least in this interim time before we
Right.
get an executive director. It'll be a combination of all of us doing this and working with you.
Okay.
Are you three officially the interim CEO? Is that what? Okay. Okay.
I just want to thank you all for all the work, getting this up and running so quickly and so thoroughly, and I appreciate all the effort it took. I'm not trying to pile onto that. I'm just trying to keep us organized moving forward. Thank you.
Does it sound like he's trying to talk or no?
Greg, did you have something that you wanted to add?
No, not at this
I
point.
thought I kept hearing something trying to jump in, but.
Okay, so with that, I just want to double check, we're adjourning until the next meeting, November the 19th at 12 p.m.
10 a.m.
Oh, you're right, that's right. And you corrected that on the agenda, and I didn't make a note of it, I apologize. So with that, adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much.